Jinwoo Park stood at the center of the great council chamber. Around him, thousands of alien beings filled the massive space. Their colors, shapes, and sizes made the room look like a strange dream. Some looked like living crystals that sparkled in the light. Others were like giant fish that floated in water-filled suits. Some buzzed and clicked like insects, while others made sounds he could not understand. Jinwoo had been the human ambassador for 20 years. He had spoken in this room many times before. Today would be his last time. He cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice was calm and steady. "Friends of the Galactic Council," he said, "I come here today to tell you something important. Humanity is leaving the Council. We are going home." A few alien heads turned toward him. Most did not even look up from their own conversations. The Veltar ambassador, a tall crystal being named Zefkol, waved one of his sharp arms in the air. This meant he was not interested in listening. "For 400 years humans have worked with you," Jinwoo continued. "We have fixed your machines. We have stopped your wars. We have carried your goods from one world to another. We have solved problems that you could not solve." Nari Kim stood behind Jinwoo. She wore the blue uniform of the human military. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were watching every alien in the room. She had warned Jinwoo that some species might try to stop them from leaving. "But we have grown tired," Jinwoo said. "Tired of being ignored. Tired of doing work that no one thanks us for. Tired of being treated like servants instead of partners." Now more aliens were listening. The Mordoon representative, a large fish-like creature in a water tank, made bubbling sounds. This was how his people showed surprise. Tae-Ho Lee sat in the human section with his computer pad. He was the chief engineer for all human projects in Council space. His fingers moved quickly over the screen as he sent messages to human bases across the galaxy. Each message was the same. "Time to go home. We have tried to work with you as equals," Jinwoo said. "But you do not see us as equals. You see us as tools. When a tool breaks, you throw it away. When a tool works well, you forget it exists." Chairman Zefkol finally stood up. His crystal body made sharp ringing sounds as he moved. "Human Jinwoo," Zefkol said in his high, cold voice. "You speak of leaving, but this is not possible. Your people have duties here. You have signed agreements. You cannot simply walk away." Jinwoo smiled. It was not a happy smile. "We can walk away," he said. "And we will. Our agreements were made when we thought you wanted us as friends. But friends do not treat friends the way you have treated us." So Jin Choi stood up from her seat. She was the human trade representative. She had spent years making deals that helped both humans and aliens. But the aliens always got the better parts of every deal. "Let me tell you what will happen," So Jin said. "Starting today, all human trade stops. All human shipping stops. All human engineering support stops. All human medical help stops. All human diplomatic help stops." The room began to buzz with alien voices. Some species were angry. Others seemed confused. "You cannot do this," said the Crick speaker, an insect-like creature with many eyes. "The galaxy needs human services. Your people are good at fixing things. This is your purpose." "No," Jinwoo said firmly. "Our purpose is whatever we choose it to be, and we choose to go home." Tae-Ho Lee looked up from his computer pad. He nodded at Jinwoo. The first phase was complete. Across the galaxy, human workers were already packing their things. Human ships were already leaving alien ports. "This is foolish," Zefkol said. His crystal body was glowing brighter now, which meant he was angry. "Where will you go? Humans have lived in council space for centuries. You have no other home." "We have many homes," Nari Kim said. She spoke for the first time and her voice was strong. "We have colony ships. We have worlds beyond the galactic rim. We have been preparing for this day for 50 years. This was true. While the aliens had been arguing with each other and ignoring, human scientists had been busy. They had found new worlds far from council space. They had built ships that could travel to these distant places. They had made secret plans. "You will be back," said the Morden ambassador, making more bubbling sounds. In a few months you will see that you cannot live without the council. You will come back and ask us to forgive you." Jinwoo picked up a small device from the table in front of him. It looked simple, but Tae-ho Lee had spent years building it. Jinwoo pressed a button on the device. All across the galaxy, the communication, networks that connected human and alien worlds went dark. The trade computers that had been running perfectly for decades suddenly stopped working. The navigation systems that guided ships through dangerous space routes shut down. "We will not be back," Jinwoo said, "and you will not be able to call us. We are cutting all ties with Council Space. From this moment on, we do not exist to you, and you do not exist to us." The alien voices grew louder. Some species were demanding that Jinwoo explain what he had done. Others were trying to call their homeworlds and finding that their communication systems no longer worked. Nari Kim stepped forward. She put her hand on Jinwoo's shoulder. "It is time to go," she said quietly. Jinwoo nodded. He looked around, the great chamber one last time. He had given 20 years of his life to this place. He had tried to build bridges between humans and aliens. But bridges needed support from both sides, and the aliens had never built their side. "Goodbye," he said to the room full of aliens. "I hope you will be happy without us." Jinwoo, Nari, Tae-ho, and Sojin walked toward the exit. No alien tried to stop them. Most were still too shocked to move. A few were angry, but they did not know what to do with their anger. As they left the chamber, they could hear the aliens starting to argue with each other. Without humans there to help them talk through their problems, the different species quickly became confused and upset. Outside the council building, a human ship waited for them. It was the last human ship in council space. Soon it would join the great fleet that was already traveling toward the edge of the galaxy. As they walked up the ramp into the ship, Sojin looked back at the building they had just left. "Do you think they understand what just happened?" she asked. "No," Jinwoo said, "but they will." The ship lifted off from the planet's surface. As it climbed toward the stars, Jinwoo watched the council world grow smaller below them. He felt sad, but also free. For 400 years, humans had worked to make the galaxy a better place. Now it was time to make their own place better. Tiritirn, ship joined with other human vessels in space above the planet. Together they turned toward the empty darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. Behind them, they left a civilization that had forgotten how to appreciate the people who kept it running. In the great council chamber, the aliens continued to argue. They did not yet understand that the galaxy had just lost the one species that knew how to make everything work. 6 months had passed since the humans left. Mi Young-han sat in her small room on the colony ship New Seoul and watched the stars through her window. The ship was traveling toward the Andromeda approach, a region of space far beyond the galactic rim where no alien had ever been. Mi Young had been a mediator for the Galactic Council. For 15 years, she had helped different alien species solve their problems and avoid wars. She was good at understanding what each species needed and finding ways to make everyone happy. But now she had no one to help except her own people. She turned on her communication device to listen to the news from Council Space. What she heard made her shake her head in disappointment. The Veltar and the Morden were fighting over mining rights in the Kepler Nebula. This was an old argument that Mi Young had helped settle many times before. The crystal people wanted to harvest energy crystals from the nebula's gas clouds. The water people wanted to collect the rare minerals that formed in the same area. When humans had been there to help, this problem was easy to solve. Mi Young would meet with both sides and work out a schedule. The Veltar could mine on certain days and the Morden could collect minerals on other days. Both species would get what they needed, and no one would fight. But now, with no human mediators, both species were being stubborn. The Veltar believed they had the right to take whatever they wanted because their technology was older. The Morden believed they should get first choice because they had found the nebula first. Neither species would talk to the other directly. The Veltar thought the Morden were too slow and stupid to understand complex crystal technology. The Morden thought the Veltar were cold and selfish creatures who cared only about themselves. Dong Hyun-yu was in the engineering section of New Seoul, watching reports from the infrastructure systems that humans had built across the galaxy. His job had been to maintain the great machines that kept alien worlds running smoothly. Now he could only watch as those machines began to break down. On the Veltar homeworld, the environmental controls that kept their crystal cities at the right temperature were starting to fail. The systems had been running perfectly for 200 years, but they needed regular maintenance that only humans knew how to provide. The Veltar engineers were trying to fix the problems themselves, but they did not understand how human technology worked. Human machines were built to adapt and change when conditions changed. Veltar technology was precise and beautiful, but it could not handle unexpected problems. The Mordoon worlds were having similar troubles. Their water purification systems were becoming less efficient each day. The Morden had tried to improve the systems using their own technology, but this had only made things worse. Donghyun watched the system reports with sadness. He had spent his whole career building machines that would help alien species live better lives. Now he was watching those machines die slowly, one by one. Hai Wanjung worked in the intelligence section of the human fleet. Her job was to watch what was happening in Council space and report on any important changes. What she saw was not good. The Cricks, the insect-like hive mind species, were expanding their territory more aggressively than they had in centuries. When humans had been part of the Council, there were treaties and agreements that kept the Cricks from taking over other species' worlds. But now those treaties were falling apart. The Cricks did not understand why they should follow human-made agreements when there were no humans around to enforce them. Their hive mind was simple and practical. If they wanted something, they took it. If someone tried to stop them, they fought. Other species were complaining to the Galactic Council about Cricks' expansion, but the Council could not agree on what to do. Each species had different ideas about how to handle the problem. Some wanted to fight the Cricks. Others wanted to make new agreements. A few wanted to just give the Cricks what they wanted and hope they would stop. Without human mediators to help them find common ground, the Council members just argued with each other. While they argued, the Cricks took 3 more star systems. Back on the Council homeworld, Chairman Zefkol was becoming increasingly frustrated. His crystal form was glowing dim orange, which meant he was worried. The problems in Council space were getting worse every day, and he did not know how to fix them. The trade networks that had connected thousands of worlds were breaking down. Ships were getting lost because the navigation systems were failing. Some planets were running out of food because the delivery schedules were no longer working properly. Zefkol had tried to contact the humans, but their communication networks were completely dark. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the universe. His pride prevented him from admitting that the Council needed human help, but privately, he was starting to understand that humans had been doing much more work than anyone had realized. The Morden ambassador came to see Zefkol with a formal complaint about the Veltar mining operations in the Kepler Nebula. The water creature was agitated, making rapid bubbling sounds in his translation device. "The crystal beings are stealing our minerals," the Morden said. "They are taking everything and leaving nothing for us. This is not fair. The Council must make them stop." Zefkol's crystals rang with frustration. This was exactly the kind of problem that human mediators used to handle. They would meet with both sides, understand what each species really needed, and find a solution that worked for everyone. "What would you have me do?" Zefkol asked. "The Veltar have as much right to mine in the nebula as your people do. We cannot simply order them to stop." "Then order them to share," the Morden replied. "Make them follow a schedule, make them leave some minerals for us." "I cannot make schedules for mining operations," Zefkol said. "That is not how the Council works. We make laws, not work schedules." But even as he said this, Zefkol realized the problem. The Council had always made the big decisions about war and peace and trade agreements. Humans had handled all the small, practical problems that kept daily life running smoothly. No one had thought about what would happen if the humans were not there to handle those problems anymore. On New Sol, Mi Young-han was reading reports about the first actual shooting between Veltar and Morden ships in the Kepler Nebula. 3 Veltar mining vessels had been destroyed, and 2 Morden collection ships were damaged. 7 beings had died. Mi Young knew that these deaths could have been prevented easily. A human mediator could have solved the mining dispute in a few days with simple scheduling and communication. Instead, the problem had grown bigger and bigger until it exploded into violence. She thought about sending a message to the council, offering to help solve the problem. But then she remembered Jinwoo Park's words from 6 months ago. Humanity had tried for 400 years to help the aliens solve their problems. The aliens had never appreciated that help. They had treated humans like servants instead of partners. Now the aliens would have to learn to solve their own problems. Mi Young hoped they would learn quickly, before more beings died unnecessarily. Dong Hyun Yu was looking at infrastructure reports that were getting worse each day. The failure rate of human-built systems was accelerating. Without proper maintenance, the machines that had worked perfectly for centuries were starting to break down in ways that the aliens could not fix. The automated trade system that had coordinated shipping between thousands of worlds was beginning to make errors. Ships were being sent to the wrong destinations. Cargo was being lost or delivered to the wrong planets. Some worlds were getting too much food while others were running short. The aliens were trying to fix these problems by making their own changes to the human systems. But human technology was designed to work as an integrated whole. When the aliens changed one part without understanding how it connected to other parts, they created new problems that were worse than the original ones. Dong Hyun could see exactly what was going wrong and exactly how to fix it, but he was millions of light years away from council space, traveling toward a new home where his skills would be used to build something better instead of maintaining something that was not appreciated. Hye-won-young was tracking the bigger political changes in council space. The careful balance of power that humans had helped maintain for centuries was starting to shift. Species that had been friendly were becoming suspicious of each other. Old rivalries that had been peacefully managed were turning into active hostilities. The council itself was becoming paralyzed by arguments. Without human mediators to help different species understand each other's positions, every discussion turned into a shouting match between incompatible viewpoints. Some council members were starting to suggest that maybe they should try to contact the humans and ask for their help. But Chairman Zefkol refused to consider this idea. His pride would not let him admit that the mighty Galactic Council needed help from the species they had treated as servants. As the months passed, the problems in council space grew worse and worse, but on the human colony ships traveling toward their new home, life was peaceful and organized. The humans who had spent centuries solving other people's problems were finally free to focus on solving their own problems and building their own future. Mi Young-han looked out at the stars again and smiled. 1 year had passed since humanity left council space. Jun Seo Kim stood on the bridge of the colony ship Busan's Pride, watching his engineers work at their stations. They were preparing to begin construction of their first permanent settlement. In the Andromeda approach, Jun Seo had been the head of the Galactic Engineering Corps before the Exodus. He had overseen the construction and maintenance of infrastructure across thousands of worlds. His teams had built the hyperspace lanes that connected distant star systems. They had created the communication networks that allowed instant conversation across the galaxy. They had designed the early warning systems that protected civilizations from cosmic disasters. Now he was using those same skills to build something new and better for his own people. But he could not ignore the reports coming from council space. The galaxy he had helped build was collapsing. The hyperspace lanes were becoming unstable. Ships that tried to use the faster-than-light travel routes were getting trapped between star systems or thrown off course to dangerous locations. Some ships had simply disappeared, lost somewhere in the twisted space between dimensions. Jun Seo knew exactly why this was happening. The hyperspace lanes were not natural phenomena. They were artificial constructs that required constant calibration and maintenance. Human engineers had spent centuries learning how to keep the lanes stable and safe. The process was incredibly complex. Each lane had to be adjusted regularly based on the gravitational changes of nearby stars and planets. Solar winds, cosmic radiation, and the expansion of space itself all affected the delicate balance that made hyperspace travel possible. The alien species had never bothered to learn how this worked. They had simply used the lanes that humans, built and maintained, assuming they would work forever without any effort on their part. Now, with no humans to maintain them, the hyperspace lanes were slowly decaying. The alien engineers who were trying to fix the problems did not understand the underlying principles. Their attempts to repair the lanes often made them more unstable than before. A.E. Park was working in the biological research section of the New Sol colony ship. She had been a xenobiologist for the Galactic Council, studying how different species could coexist in shared environments. Her work had been crucial for creating the agricultural systems that fed billions of beings across the galaxy. The reports she was receiving from Council space showed that those agricultural systems were now failing catastrophically. Human agricultural specialists had spent centuries adapting Earth crops to grow on alien worlds. They had created complex ecosystems where plants, animals, and microorganisms from hundreds of different worlds could work together to produce food efficiently and sustainably. This work required deep understanding of biology, chemistry, soil science, and climate management. It also required constant monitoring and adjustment as conditions changed on each world. The aliens had assumed that once the agricultural systems were established, they would continue working automatically. They had never learned the science behind crop rotation, soil management, or ecosystem balance. Now, without human oversight, the agricultural systems were breaking down. Crops were failing due to soil depletion and pest infestations. The careful balance between different species in each ecosystem was collapsing as invasive organisms took over. Some worlds were experiencing total crop failures. Others were producing food that was contaminated with toxins from plants that had never been meant to grow together. The galaxy was facing its first major food crisis in 3 centuries. Wu Jin Li had been the coordinator of the Galactic Crisis Response System. His job had been to monitor the galaxy for potential disasters and organize rapid response efforts when emergencies occurred. The early warning system he had helped create was incredibly sophisticated. It tracked solar activity across millions of stars, watching for dangerous solar flares that could disrupt technology or harm living beings. It monitored asteroid movements to predict potential impacts with inhabited worlds. It watched for signs of stellar collapse that could threaten entire star systems. When the system detected a potential threat, it would automatically send warnings to all affected worlds and coordinate evacuation or protection efforts. The system had saved countless lives over the centuries by giving advance warning of cosmic disasters. Now that system was completely dark. The aliens had tried to restart it, but they could not understand how it worked. The system required real-time analysis of vast amounts of data from sensors throughout the galaxy. It used complex algorithms that had been developed through centuries of human experience with disaster management. Without the early warning system, the galaxy was essentially blind to cosmic threats. Dangerous solar flares were hitting planets without warning. Asteroid impacts were occurring with no advance notice. Several worlds had already suffered major disasters that could have been prevented if the warning system had been working. The most serious example happened 3 months after the system went dark. A massive solar flare from the Veltar home star hit their crystal homeworld without any warning. The radiation destroyed many of their beautiful crystal cities and killed millions of Veltar. If the human early warning system had been working, the Veltar would have received a warning 3 days before the flare arrived. They could have protected their cities with energy shields and evacuated the most vulnerable areas. Instead, they suffered the worst natural disaster in their recorded history. Chairman Zefkol stood in the ruins of his capital city, looking at the shattered crystal towers that had once been the pride of his civilization. His own crystal form was dull and cracked from radiation exposure. Around him, rescue teams were still searching for survivors among the rubble. The solar flare had not just destroyed buildings, it had also wiped out the Veltar communication networks and damaged their manufacturing facilities. Their entire civilization had been set back by decades in a single day. Zefkol finally understood what Jinwu Park had been trying to tell the Council a year ago. Humans had not just been doing simple maintenance work. They had been the immune system of galactic civilization, protecting everyone from threats that most species never even knew existed. The Morden worlds were facing a different but equally serious crisis. Their attempts to improve the human-designed Water purification systems had backfired catastrophically. 3 ocean worlds had been poisoned when Morden engineers tried to increase the efficiency of the purification plants. The Morden had thought they understood water chemistry better than humans because they were an aquatic species. But the human systems were designed to handle the complex chemical interactions between water from different worlds and the various species that lived in those waters. When the Morden modified the systems, they accidentally created chemical reactions that produced deadly toxins. Entire ocean ecosystems were dying. Billions of Morden were being evacuated from their poisoned homeworlds to temporary shelters on other planets. The Crick's hive mind was expanding aggressively into the chaos, but they were discovering that conquest was easier than administration. The worlds they had taken from other species were equipped with human-designed infrastructure that the Cricks could not understand or operate. The Cricks were excellent at following orders and working together, but they had no individual creativity or problem-solving ability. Human technology required constant adaptation and creative solutions to unexpected problems. The rigid Crick's mindset could not handle this kind of flexible thinking. As a result, the worlds under Crick's control were experiencing system failures just like the rest of the galaxy. The Cricks were winning their wars, but they were losing the peace as their conquered territories fell into technological and economic collapse. The galactic communication network was fragmenting as different species tried to implement their own improvements to the human-designed protocols. Each species thought their own communication methods were superior, so they modified the network to work better for their particular needs. But the human protocols had been carefully designed to work for all species simultaneously. When each species optimized the network for themselves, they broke its ability to connect different types of beings. The result was that species could no longer communicate effectively with each other. Trade negotiations were failing because the different sides could not understand each other's transmissions. Diplomatic messages were being lost or mistranslated. The unity that had held the Galactic Council together for centuries was dissolving into confusion and mistrust. On the human colony ships, Jun Seo Kim was watching reports of all these disasters with a mixture of sadness and frustration. He knew exactly how to fix every single problem the galaxy was facing. His engineering teams could restore the hyperspace lanes in a matter of months. His colleagues could rebuild the early warning systems and get the communication networks working again. But they were millions of light years away from Council space, and they had no intention of going back to repair systems for people who had never appreciated their work. Eri Park was documenting the collapse of the galactic agricultural systems for historical purposes. Future generations of humans would need to understand what happened when a complex technological civilization lost the knowledge and skills needed to maintain itself. 2 years had passed since humanity's quiet departure. Subin Choi stood on the observation deck of the exploration vessel Busan's Pride, watching the construction of New Harmony, humanity's first permanent settlement beyond the galactic rim. The city was taking shape on a beautiful world with blue skies and green forests, a place where humans could build their own future without interference. Reports from Council space continued to arrive through long-range sensors, and each report painted a darker picture of galactic collapse. Wars were spreading across multiple sectors as species that had coexisted peacefully for centuries turned against each other. Ancient civilizations were fragmenting as their technological infrastructure failed beyond repair. The Galactic Council itself was barely functioning. Member species were withdrawing their representatives and closing their borders. Some had stopped communicating with the outside galaxy entirely, focusing only on protecting their own worlds from the chaos surrounding them. Chairman Zefkel had finally swallowed his crystalline pride and authorized a desperate search for humanity. The mission was led by Ambassador Thekvar, a Veltar diplomat known for his skill in difficult negotiations. His orders were simple: find the humans and bring them back at any cost. Thekvar's fleet had been searching for 6 months, following every possible lead about human movements after the Exodus. They had found abandoned human stations and deactivated beacons, but no trace of where humanity had actually gone. Kyung-Ho Park had been the chief of Galactic Council security before, The human departure. Now he was serving as a military advisor to the human colonial government, helping to design defense systems for their new worlds. He was monitoring the alien search efforts with professional interest. "They are looking in all the wrong places," he told Subin as they watched the construction of New Harmony's spaceport. "They assume we stayed within the galaxy's borders. They cannot imagine that we would go so far beyond the rim that we are essentially in intergalactic space." The human exodus had been planned carefully over many decades. While the aliens had been arguing with each other and ignoring human contributions, human scientists and engineers had been secretly exploring the regions beyond the galaxy's edge. They had found suitable worlds and established hidden supply caches for the long journey. The aliens had never bothered to learn about human exploration activities. They had assumed that humans were content to stay within Council space forever, serving as the galaxy's maintenance crew and problem solvers. Yejin Kim had been a senior diplomat in the Council's Foreign Relations Department. She had spent years trying to build better relationships between humans and the various alien species. Now she was serving as the colonial government's expert on alien psychology and behavior. "I warned them this would happen," she told a gathering of colonial leaders. "I wrote reports explaining that human patience was not unlimited. I documented every instance of disrespect and discrimination. I predicted that eventually humans would reach their breaking point." Her reports had been filed away and ignored by alien administrators who believed that humans were naturally subservient and would never dare to challenge the established order. The idea that humans might simply leave the galaxy had been literally unthinkable to species that viewed humans as essential but replaceable tools. Back in Council space, Thekvar's search fleet had finally found something significant: a hidden, human facility on the edge of the outer rim. The facility had been abandoned, but it contained a vast computer database with detailed records of human activities over the past century. Most of the database was encrypted, but Thekvar's technicians managed to access a single file labeled, "For When You Finally Understand." The file contained a message from Tae-Ho Lee, the former chief engineer of human galactic operations. "If you are reading this," Tae-Ho's message began, "then you have finally realized what you have lost. This database contains the technical specifications for every system that humans built and maintained in Council space. It includes operating manuals, maintenance schedules, and troubleshooting guides for all critical infrastructure." Thekvar felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this was the answer to the galaxy's problems. If they could understand human technology, they could repair the failing systems without needing the humans themselves. But as his technicians studied the files, their hope turned to despair. The manuals were written in a way that assumed the reader had human-level adaptability and intuitive problem-solving abilities. The instructions often said things like, "Adjust the parameters as needed based on local conditions," or "Use your judgment to determine the optimal configuration." The alien species had evolved to be highly specialized. The Veltar were excellent at logical analysis but terrible at adapting to unexpected situations. The Mordun were good at collaborative decision-making, but too slow for emergency responses. The Creeks were perfect at following orders but incapable of individual initiative or creative thinking. Human technology had been designed by generalists for generalists. It required the kind of flexible, adaptive thinking that humans took for granted, but that other species found nearly impossible to develop. A team of Veltar engineers spent 3 months trying to follow a human manual for hyperspace lane maintenance. They followed every instruction precisely, but when they tried to activate the system, it failed catastrophically. The mathematical precision that the Veltar prized so highly was useless when dealing with technology that required intuitive adjustments and creative problem-solving. A group of Mordun technicians attempted to restart the galactic communication network using human protocols. Their collective decision-making process allowed them to understand the theoretical principles, but they were too slow to handle the real-time adjustments needed to keep the system running. By the time they reached consensus on any decision, the network had already crashed. The Cricks tried to implement human agricultural techniques on their conquered worlds. They followed the instructions with perfect precision, but when unexpected problems arose, pest infestations, weather changes, soil chemistry fluctuations, They had no idea how to adapt. Their crops failed repeatedly because they could not think beyond the exact parameters they had been given. Tekvar realized that the human technical manuals were not really meant to help the aliens fix their problems. They were a demonstration of how impossible it would be to replace human expertise with alien alternatives. The search for humanity became increasingly desperate as the galactic crisis deepened. The food shortage was causing starvation on dozens of worlds. The breakdown of hyperspace travel had isolated entire star systems. The failure of early warning systems had resulted in several more solar flare disasters and asteroid impacts. The Galactic Council held an emergency session to address the crisis. For the first time in centuries, there was unanimous agreement on a single resolution. Humanity must be found and convinced to return, regardless of the cost. Chairman Zefkol performed the Veltar ritual of crystal breaking, publicly admitting that his species had been fundamentally wrong about humanity's role in galactic civilization. The ritual required him to shatter one of his own crystal appendages, causing permanent damage to his body as a sign of sincere regret. Other species followed with their own traditional apologies. The Morden performed the deep current ceremony, acknowledging that they had failed to recognize the true depth of human contributions. The Crix Queen sent a formal message of submission, admitting that the hive mind had been wrong to view humans as simple tools rather than essential partners. These public apologies were broadcast throughout Council space, serving as a formal invitation for humanity to return to the galaxy. But the broadcasts reached only empty space. Humanity had gone so far beyond the galactic rim that no communication could reach them. Meanwhile, in the Andromeda approach, human civilization was flourishing. The colony of New Harmony was growing rapidly, with advanced technology that surpassed anything they had built in Council space. Free from the need to accommodate alien requirements and restrictions, human engineers and scientists were pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Subin Choi was working on plans for humanity's second colony world. The success of New Harmony had proven that humans could not only survive without the galaxy, but could actually thrive better on their own. "We should establish a monitoring station," she suggested to the Colonial Council. "Something that can observe Council space and track what is happening there, not because we plan to return, but because we need to understand how civilizations collapse so we can avoid making the same mistakes." The suggestion was approved unanimously. Human scientists began building long-range observation systems that could monitor galactic events from their distant sanctuary. They watched with detached interest as the civilization they had once served continued its descent into chaos. Kyung-ho Park was training the first generation of humans who had no memory of life in Council space. These young people had grown up during the Exodus and seen only human achievements and human potential. "Will we ever go back to the galaxy?" one of them asked during a history lesson about the old Galactic Council. "That depends," Kyung-ho replied, "on whether they ever learn to value what they once threw away." 3 years had passed since humanity's quiet departure from the galaxy. Jinwoo Park stood in his garden on New Harmony, watching his grandchildren play among the flowers he had planted. The former ambassador had aged gracefully in the peaceful environment of humanity's new home, his hair now silver but his eyes still sharp and intelligent. A soft chime from his communication device interrupted his peaceful afternoon. Nari Kim's face appeared on the screen, now bearing the insignia of Admiral of the Human Colonial Fleet. "Jinwoo," she said, her expression serious. "We have visitors." Through the vast network of monitoring stations that humanity had established, they had been tracking the final collapse of galactic civilization. The food crisis had reached critical levels. The hyperspace network had failed completely, isolating thousands of star systems. The early warning systems remained dark, leaving billions of beings vulnerable to cosmic disasters. But now, for the first time in 3 years, a signal had reached the human colonies. It was weak and distorted, transmitted by a ramshackle fleet of alien ships that had somehow found their way to the edge of intergalactic space. Jinwoo made his way to the Colonial Capitol building, where the Emergency Council was already in session. The message from the alien fleet was being played on the main screen. The speaker was Tekvar, the Veltar ambassador who had been leading the search for humanity. Honored humans. Tekvar's crystal voice was dim with exhaustion and desperation. We have traveled farther than any of our people have ever gone. We have searched for 3 years across the empty darkness between galaxies. We come to you now not as representatives of the Galactic Council, but as refugees seeking help. The transmission was interrupted by bursts of static. The alien ships were clearly in poor condition, pushed far beyond their design limits by the desperate journey to find humanity. Our civilizations are dying, Tekvar continued. Billions of beings face starvation. Our technology is failing. Our worlds are becoming uninhabitable. We have tried everything we can think of to repair the systems you built for us, but we do not have the knowledge or skills to maintain them. Jinwoo listened with the same calm attention he had once given to alien complaints and demands in the council chambers. But now the situation was reversed. The aliens were the ones asking for help, and humanity held all the power. Hyo Jin-Lee sat beside her grandfather Jinwoo, representing the new generation of humans who had grown up in the colonies. She was 22 years old and had never lived under alien rule. To her, the Galactic Council was ancient history, and the species that had once treated humans as servants were just subjects in history books. Why should we help them? She asked, quietly. They treated our people badly for centuries. They ignored our contributions and took our work for granted. When we tried to be their partners, they treated us like tools. Why should we care what happens to them now? Her words reflected the feelings of many young humans in the colonies. They had heard stories about life in council space, but they had also seen what humanity could accomplish when freed from alien restrictions and demands. The human colonies were thriving with technology and social systems that surpassed anything that had existed in the old galaxy. Min Ho Choi, another representative of the younger generation, nodded in agreement. We have built something better here. We have solved problems that the galaxy thought were impossible to solve. We have created a civilization based on respect and cooperation instead of hierarchy and exploitation. Why should we give that up? To go back and fix their mistakes? Admiral Nari Kim stood to address the council. The decision is not mine to make, she said, but I think we should at least hear what they have to say. They have traveled farther than any alien species in recorded history just to find us. That shows a level of determination and humility that we never saw when they held power over us. The Council voted to allow the alien fleet to approach New Harmony under strict security protocols. The ships that arrived were indeed in terrible condition. They were a mixed group of vessels from different species, held together with improvised repairs and jury-rigged systems. Tekvar led the delegation that came down to the planet's surface. The once proud Veltar diplomat was physically diminished, his crystal form cracked and dull from the hardships of the long journey. With him were representatives from the major council species, Morden, Crix, and others. They were brought to the same garden where Jinwoo had been relaxing earlier. The setting was deliberate, a reminder that humans had found peace and prosperity after leaving the galaxy behind. Ambassador Jinwoo Park, Tekvar said formally. I stand before you as a representative of the species that once dismissed your people as mere technicians and mediators. I come to admit that we were wrong. Catastrophically, tragically wrong. Jinwoo studied the alien diplomat with calm curiosity. Please continue. We never understood what your people were doing for us, Tekvar said. We saw only the surface of your work, the repairs, the negotiations, the problem-solving. We did not see the deeper knowledge and wisdom that made all of it possible. We thought anyone could do what humans did, if they just learned the right procedures. The Morden representative, an elderly being named Gulwav, made the bubbling sounds that indicated deep emotional distress. My people poisoned 3 of our own worlds trying to improve your water purification systems. We thought we understood water better than you, because we are aquatic beings. But you understood not just water, but life itself. You understood how different forms of life could work together in ways we never imagined. The Creek's speaker, a drone designated as Voice of Regret, made rapid clicking sounds. Our hive mind is efficient at following orders and implementing plans, but we cannot adapt when conditions change. Your people built systems that could adapt and grow and change as needed. We cannot replicate this because we cannot think as individuals. We can only follow the patterns we are given. Jinwoo listened to each species explain their failures and limitations. It was a complete reversal of the old council dynamic, where aliens had lectured humans about their supposed shortcomings and limitations. Hyojin Lee leaned forward in her chair. So you have come here to ask us to return and fix your problems. But what has changed? If we go back, will you treat us as equals this time? Or will you go back to treating us as servants once your immediate crisis is resolved? Thekvar's crystal form glowed with something that might have been shame. Honored young human, we have nothing left to offer except our acknowledgement of your superiority. The Galactic Council has formally dissolved. The old power structures have collapsed. If you choose to return, it would not be as our servants or even as our partners. It would be as our leaders. This admission sent a shock through the human council. The aliens were not just asking for help. They were offering to surrender control of galactic civilization to humanity. Nari Kim spoke carefully. You are offering to make humans the rulers of the galaxy? We are offering to acknowledge what was always true, Thekvar replied. Humans were already the ones keeping galactic civilization functioning. We were just too proud and too stupid to admit it. Now we are asking you to take official responsibility for what you were already doing in practice. Minho Choi stood up, his young face showing skepticism. And what guarantee do we have that you will not change your minds once your immediate problems are solved? What stops you from going back to the old ways once your worlds are safe and your technology is working again? The alien delegates looked at each other. Finally, Thekvar reached into his travel pack and pulled out a crystal tablet covered with symbols from dozens of different alien languages. This is the new Galactic Compact, he said. It has been signed by every surviving species in Council Space. It formally recognizes human judgment as final in all matters of infrastructure, technology, crisis management, and interspecies relations. It grants humans permanent authority over all systems critical to galactic civilization. He placed the tablet on the table in front of Jinwoo. This is not a temporary emergency measure. This is a permanent acknowledgement that humans are the only species capable of managing the complexity of galactic civilization. We are not asking you to return as our helpers. We are asking you to return as our leaders. Jinwoo picked up the tablet and studied it carefully. The legal language was complex, but the meaning was clear. The alien species were essentially surrendering their sovereignty to human authority in exchange for human expertise and leadership. This is quite a change from 3 years ago, Jinwoo observed mildly. 3 years ago, you could barely tolerate having humans in the same room as your people. Now you want to make us your rulers. 3 years ago, we were fools, Thekvar admitted. We confused pride with wisdom and arrogance with strength. We have learned the difference between the two, though the lesson cost us dearly. The Human Council spent several hours discussing the alien proposal. Some members, especially the older ones who remembered life in council space, were inclined to help despite the poor treatment they had received. Others, particularly the younger generation, were skeptical of alien motivations and reluctant to give up their peaceful new life. Finally, Jinwoo called for a decision.